Welcome back to course 2. Today we have Dahlia and Gail both joining us. Gail, if you could just introduce yourself, because there are new people on the course, so it would be great for a second. Gail took our class last year. I'll unmute you. There we go. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Gail. I'm Joey's mom. I was on a cruise last week on a little getaway, so that's why I wasn't here last week. But I'm happy to be here today.
I'm glad that I hope the getaway was good and worthwhile and relaxing and all of that. And it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
All right, and Dahlia, you're up. Go ahead. Just your name, where you from, whatever.
My name's Dahlia. I'm originally from New York, and we lived in Dallas and just moved to College Station this past June. So coming up on 1 year, and we're fixtures on that, so it's nice to participate.
Right, Dahlia, actually, we're so lucky. She's here, and her kids are here in the Hebrew school, and it's wonderful because this time schedule works better for Dahlia than the Wednesday class. So it's great to have you join us. And I know we have a 972 number. I'm not sure it's on a phone. I'm not sure who that is. If you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, at least virtually. I know we have Karen here, who introduced herself last week, and we have a 972 number. I'm not sure who it is, because it doesn't say your name. You're not registered with your name, but you feel free to jump in and just say hi, or just listen in. Okay, we'll just jump right in, right to the class. Okay, so this class, I just want to see, give me a second, speaker view. Let's go here, sorry about that. Okay. So last week, oh, there we go. We have, do you want to say hi and introduce yourselves briefly? We can't hear you. Hold on, let's see if we can unmute you. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. Is that on purpose? All right, well, this is Musi and Mimi Rabinowitz. I'm gonna have to introduce you. They're in New York, and they've joined us in College Station, and they decided to jump in and join this course as well. So we're excited to have them join it. And Torah learning is for everyone, no matter where you are, in Brooklyn, Dallas, California. It's always an amazing opportunity to learn together. Okay, so moving along, last class, if you recall, we discussed, let me just adjust my camera because it's gonna make me a little nervous. There we go. Okay, last class we kind of did more of an introduction to Kabbalah. What is Kabbalah, what it isn't. And we discussed that the reason we need to have that kind of context is to really frame this course of Tanya, which is soul maps. And I left off saying that that the Jewish people found themselves at a really challenging time living in Russia, living where they lived. There was a lot of poverty, a lot of ignorance. There was a huge divide between the scholars and the sages and the average regular, farmer. And to the extent that people were not necessarily literate, they were living in poverty, and there were a lot of challenges and struggles going on with that generation. And so the gift of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe basically found that a lot of his time was being spent meeting one-on-one to help people and guide them. And as we said, the Tanya was written or compiled or put together in order to kind of document some of that sage advice. As the Alter Rebbe actually said, is that there are those who have given advice to already, and they're coming back with the same challenges or the same struggles. So if I document it, then it will be, easier for that person to tap into those resources. Interestingly enough, the Tanya is called three different names. So first of all, it's called Likutei Amarim, which literally means a gathering of sayings, collection of discourses. And the Alter Rebbe named Tanya itself that, and it kind of is hinting to the humility of the Alter Rebbe, that he acknowledges that a lot of what is being documented and written here, even though it's organized in a different capacity, a different structure, which we'll talk about shortly, this is basically a collection of ideas that are from other heavenly sources, meaning other righteous people that came before me and other, say other wise people. And so there's a level of humility that the Alter Rebbe is in a way not taking credit for really one of these masterpieces of the Alter Rebbe's gift to the world, and gift to his generation, and as we'll see as it goes along, as relevant when it was published in 1796 as it is in 2020. So that is the first kind of name, a collection of sayings, a collection of discourses, a gathering of ideas. Again, alluding to the Alter Rebbe's a level of humility. The other name, which is more popularly known as, is the Tanya. Now, the name Tanya actually is after the first word that opens the book, which is talking, and it's actually the term from Talmud that opens the quote of this incredible work. And it's a quotation from the Talmud, and it's talking, and really it's where the Alter Rebbe is opening up this system of understanding and dealing with mystical ideas and that have to do with the soul's descent into the world, okay? And so that's how the Alter Rebbe opens up the Tanya, which will make sense. Why is he opening up the Tanya with this quote from the Talmud, which talks about the soul's descent into the world? What does that have to do with you and with I? And that's actually the starting point of the Alter Rebbe, like, launches this Likutei Amar, this Tanya. And the last name is actually called Sefer Shel Beinanim. So in order to understand what Sefer Shel Beinanim is, which literally Beinanim means the intermediate, okay? So it's the book of intermediates. So what does that mean? So the Alter Rebbe is going to shortly describe different, in a way, personalities or types of people. And the intermediate person is really the person the Alter Rebbe is kind of giving this gift of, I mean, it's for anyone, and we'll see shortly, but really the intermediate is a type of person who is not a tzaddik, meaning they're not fully righteous, okay? And they're certainly not a rasha, which is someone who is not righteous. So really the author is kind of saying this is the targeted audience that I'm talking to, or, and we'll talk about is how to get there, how to become that intermediate person, which we'll talk about how a tzaddik comes into the world, a righteous person, and we'll get to that shortly. And really what the Alter Rebbe is saying is that within each and every one of us, there's potential to become that Beinani, that middleman, right? None of us are Rishayim, we're not evil. I mean, I can't speak for you, but I can certainly not count myself as a Rasha, and I cannot count myself as a tzaddik. A tzaddik is someone who's completely righteous and does, you know, everything all the time exactly the way it's supposed to be. I'm not one of those, okay? So the Alter Rebbe is basically talking to me and to you and to all of us, and is going to actually give us real practical tools on how to navigate it. Now, interestingly enough, the Tanya is actually comprised of 5 different sections, the whole book of Tanya. The first one is the one we're actually going to learn together, which is comprised of 53 chapters. And it took the Alter Rebbe 20 years to author because there was such nuance and such details that I think there was an account that it took the Alter Rebbe like 2 weeks to decide between like one single letter, where it belonged, did it not belong, what message would it send, etc. So there's a lot of intentionality in every single layer of it. Interestingly enough, for those of you who studied with us before, we talked about when the Alter Rebbe actually sat in prison for that which was, you know, there was accusations against him, and people are like, oh, that's so cute. The Alter Rebbe was in prison for 53 days. That has to do with the 53 chapters. Maybe that's why he did 53 chapters. And actually, he sat in prison after the 53 chapters. After the Tanya was completed, that's when the Alter Rebbe was imprisoned, which maybe will come up a little bit later. Kind of, actually, we'll throw it in here now, is what actually happened. There was a group of Jews that did not agree with these ideas being disseminated. They thought there was levels of blasphemy. There was levels of, they certainly didn't understand how it was empowering and emboldening a simple illiterate farmer, Jewish farmer. And they didn't understand the approach. It was a very new approach. And we all know that whenever there's a new approach, people really don't align with it. And so they like when Maimonides codified the Torah, people were like, oh my gosh. They actually wanted to put Maimonides in excommunication, religious excommunication, because they didn't understand what he was trying to accomplish. So it's not foreign to know that Jews challenge other Jews. These people actually challenged Alter Rebbe, and they falsified documents where he was sending us money, as we said, maybe possibly last week, to the people that lived in Israel, and they falsified documents, and he was thrown in jail for 53 days. And as I said last week, he said he found out later that it was the 53 day, like that there was a challenge. Anything that happens in this world happens as a parallel, and as he said in last class, and there was basically a challenge in heaven should these secrets be disseminated. And when he was released, he was basically a vote of confidence, continue to spread these words forward. The other thing is it was also correlating to the 53 parshiot, sections in the Torah. And interestingly enough, as Chabadnikim have a custom to actually study portions of Tanya every single day. Moving forward, as we said last week, this is not necessarily a book of like faith, like do you believe, do you not believe, though there is one of the sections in Tanya that deal with it, but not in these chapters. This is really a system of how to align my mind, my soul, my psyche with my potential, with self-actualization. And there are obviously, Kabbalah, as we said last week, has a lot of esoteric dimensions, abstract dimensions, things that we don't often think about, that things that deal with the inner esoteric dimensions of the Torah, or the soul of the Torah, as we said last week. This is a system that unifies the esoteric, meaning the deep and mystical abstract ideas, such as a soul. We can't see it, we can't touch it, right? And unifies it with like exoteric ideas, with like how we act and think and feel, etc. Okay, I'm just looking forward to seeing. Okay, so what I think we're going to do now is I would love to jump straight into the text of the book itself, and this is where everyone gets to get involved. So if you have the book in front of you, we're going to start on the student page 1, and we're going to discuss, we're going to just jump right in. Any questions so far to frame this course before we jump into the text itself? Any thoughts, questions, ideas? Not yet? Okay, but if you have them, you have to ask them, okay? Otherwise, I'm bored. If I just talk a whole night, it's pretty boring. I'm not gonna lie, okay? All right, so who would like to read the introduction on page 1? Anyone?
I'll do that, that's easy.
Thank you, Susan. Go ahead.
So you think you are perfect just the way you are, or you think the idea of perfection is a myth and an impossibility. You think humans are born in sin, or that we are all pure until the world gets its hands on it. Truth, of course, is always nuanced, and the only absolute is that nothing is absolute. We will begin our inner journey with a revolutionary new look at the basic moral divide. Hence, if you think you're going to be drawing the line between good and evil, you are in for a big surprise.
Okay. There are very different perspectives and ideas. Some people think we're good, we come into the world good, and then society, life, trauma, circumstances ruin us. I remember once someone telling us with our first child, they said, they come into the world good. The trick is not to ruin them, right? Don't get in the way. That's the trick. Don't get in the way. And I found a very interesting advice that I've taken through life, but like, which one is it? Are we perfect at the onset and then just life ruins us? Society ruins us, experiences ruin us. Thoughts about this?
I think it's both.
Explain.
I think you're born with certain tendencies, and you can find yourself in situations that either are accentuated or not. And then some of it happens to you, but I don't know. I think it's a combination of
combination. Things. Okay, that's a very good, that's a clear perspective. It makes sense. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this before we?
Well, as a pediatrician, I don't think babies are perfect at birth. I mean, some babies are obviously much easier than others, but I don't think any of them are perfect at birth.
It's interesting because at the end of the day, Finn got 6 babies, and guess what? Different personalities. Different circumstances, different reaction. This one cried from day 1. Everything bothered this child. This child, unless they were like starving, they didn't cry. Even with the triplets, where you could say every environmental reality was the same, right? They still reacted differently. They still grew and thought and feel, and anyone who knows them knows they're very, very, very different. So what's interesting is that really the Alter Rebbe is going to redefine perfection. Because what we're going to see here is that we have a perspective of what perfection looks like. And the Alter Rebbe is going to give us, like, shift the playing field and show us that actually perfection, according to Alter Rebbe's definition and explanation, is actually attainable. And it's attainable according to like certain steps, like which will, like, what does that even mean? Like, perfection is attainable. Because if I said to you, you're the perfect mother. If anyone said it to me, oh, you're the perfect mother, you're the perfect rabbit, my kids would laugh. My husband would laugh. I'm a human being, right? Some good days, some bad days. You know, I once heard a parenting lecture, and the woman said she realized she was walking down the hall and she stepped on her like Legos that someone had left out, and she like lost it. And she was like, oh my goodness, you know, like, which one of you left it here? And then like suddenly her son's like, oh, the neighbor's kid who's sitting right there, like, you know, it's his Lego set. And so she's like, oh, that's okay, it's fine, let's clean it up together, right? Like, we all know that, right? So we have our moments, but is that perfection or not? So we'll talk about that shortly, what that actually looks like, and how do we do it. So before we like go further, Alter Rebbe is basically going to spend the first 8 chapters kind of giving us the overview of where this system takes place. Because this, yes, Chabad is a philosophy, which we'll talk about, and by the end of this course, you'll have a deeper dive into that, but it also creates a system for self-refinement and for self-actualization, and in order to maximize our potential. And the Alter Rebbe actually says it's based on a pasuk in Deuteronomy that Moses said before he was passing away. We all know in the book of Devarim, which is called Mishnah Torah, which is called the second. It's a repeat because a lot of it is Moses is basically passing away, and he spends, you know, the last few, like he spends his last time with the Jewish people. He's been with them for 40 years. He's had ups and downs with them, and he's kind of reviewing some of the stories. And he's like, you know, listen, I'm moving on, but like, let me just review some incidences that happened, and let me just kind of, this wasn't okay, this was okay, and kind of what's the takeaway from each of them. And at one point, Moshe says something, Ki karov elacha hadavar me'od beficha uvavavcha l'soso, which means it is close to you, elacha, to you personally, hadavar me'od, this thing, meaning Torah, beficha, with your speech, uvavcha, with your heart, your emotions, l'soso, with your actions, to do. Interestingly enough, is what happens, and the Lubavitch Rebbe had 12 sayings, 12 mindsets, 12 mantras that he wanted every single person to know and internalize, and this is part of it. This is one of them. And actually, our young children learn them from a very young age, which in maybe next semester course it can be on those 12 mantras, because they're really 12 mindsets for life, very healthy mindsets for life. But this one is interesting because the passage alone kind of shows you like Torah is accessible to you. Like, you may think it's not, but it actually is, and it's personal, and it's yours, and your emotions could align with it, your intellect could align with it, and your actions could align with it, okay? And this book will actually help us figure out how to align the mind, the emotions, and the actions, right? But Moshe, before he says it, he kind of is actually anticipating every excuse we may come up with in the future. He says, he's talking about Torah, and he says, Lo b'shamayim, it's not in the heavens. Lo me'ever le'yam, it's not across the ocean. Like, for someone else in some other country living some other lifestyle, these things are relevant, right? Lo neflesahi mimcha, it's not too high and too lofty for you. Lo rachokahi, it's not too far from you, too distant. He basically is saying, don't think, okay, Torah or these values that we're going to learn, that you've learned until now, are for someone else. That's a great idea. That's for the rabbi's family. Or if I lived in Israel, it would be very easy to do that mitzvah, right? We know as humans, we make, if I didn't live in College Station, it'd be very easy to do, whatever. And some of it's real, because some mitzvot are more challenging. Like, let's say the mikvah here is 100 miles away. So when I introduce the mikvah to a Jewish woman, guess what? I'm asking her to drive 100 miles each way. That is a far mitzvah to do. But what Moses was saying is, I know you humans. I've been with you for a while, and I anticipate some of your excuses you're going to make. And we do that all the time. Like, if I was this, then I could. If I wouldn't, and the Alter Rebbe actually uses this pasuk as the launch into what this system of Tanya is. So Tanya is not a book, and it's not a philosophy. It's actually more like a recipe. Follow step by step by step. However, in the first 8 chapters, the Alter Rebbe kind of gives us a drone's eye view of the map of, first of all, sorry, let me try this again. Their first 8 chapters, the Alter Rebbe kind of gives us the anatomy, the landscape, where this takes place. Now, Susan, you're a doctor. First year of med school, you weren't treating people, right? We wouldn't have wanted you to treat people.
Or not well.
Right, exactly. We would want you to at least be learning anatomy. Know where the situation, where these issues are happening. And later on, we can dive into different circumstances, different conditions, and different solutions for different conditions. So actually, when someone sometimes takes a dive into Tanya for the first time, passage by passage, they kind of get a little bit, in the beginning, it can come off a little bit, not dry, but a little bit like abstract or not relevant. Like, okay, my rabbi or my rebbitzin said this is something that's like practical, real, and relevant with amazing takeaway tools. But how is that possible? We're just talking about the anatomy of where things happen. So Alter Rebbe is going to spend the first 8 chapters giving us kind of the lay of the land. And then going to build on it. It's almost like saying, I wouldn't give you a recipe, the how-to of the recipe, without giving you the ingredients that you need to gather. Right? Like mix it, chop it, boil it, bake it, delicious. What am I doing? What am I working with? And so the first 8 chapters kind of gives us that lay of the land. And so we're going to be learning some new terms and new ideas of what is the lay of the land of me as a human being. Okay? And the Alter Rebbe is going to he actually explains in his introduction to Tanya that obviously it's a system and obviously it could take a lifetime to like master the system, which we'll talk about it. But the Alter Rebbe is also saying that if you're struggling, if there's an idea of Tanya that doesn't resonate with you, don't do it on your own. Don't try to learn it on your own. Find a mentor, find someone, discuss it together, grow from it, okay? So now back to what we were just talking about with that mindset. The idea of perfection, as we said, is going to be redefined. And I actually find that with our students in 2020, a lot of their personal struggles is how they perceive perfection and failure. Okay? A lot of their stress, a lot of their anxiety, a lot of the day-to-day grind and the day-to-day struggles is how do they perceive self, what they can actualize, how they can express themselves, can they be perfect? And it causes a lot more of a challenge for them than and I find actually, interestingly enough, is when students start learning these tools from the Tanya, because we teach this course every single year on campus, they walk away with a healthier sense of self because they see, again, this lens of perfection in a more practical, more realistic, actually. So to think that the Alter Rebbe in 1796 or is giving tools for us in 2020 that are as relevant today as they were then, it's mind-boggling. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe is going to open up by giving us the nature of our, like, who we are internally and what that struggle looks like. And like we said, it was published in 1796, and it's not a book, it's a program. And we're going to dive right into text 1 on page 2. Go for it, anyone who would like to. Anyone who wants to read for us?
I address.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dahlia. Go for it.
All right. I address those who know me well, with whom affectionate words were often exchanged in private audience, and who revealed to me all the hidden recesses of their hearts and minds in matters related to the service of God. All of these compiled sayings are answers to many questions posed continually by our fellows seeking advice, each according to their stature in the service of God, so as to receive guidance for themselves in the service of God. Because time no longer permits me to reply to everyone individually on his particular query, and also because the advice heard in private audience may be forgotten, I've recorded all the replies to all the questions. No longer will they need to press for a private audience, for in these Lipa marine collected disclosures, they'll find tranquility for their souls and true counsel on everything that they find difficult in the service of God.
Okay. So this is the Alter Rebbe introducing why this is done, right? Why he documented this, and what are some of the reasons the Alter Rebbe is outlining?
So you don't need to find him. You can
time constraints
yourself.
Yeah. I want to give you tools. I want you to do this. I want you to be able to do this. I want you to be able to succeed. What else is the Alter Rebbe saying? I don't have enough time. I just don't have enough time. People would come to the altar as a life coach or a mentor for consult. Time was limited. Moving forward, what is the altar be expressing? Anything else you see in this quote? Anyone feel free to jump in. Anyone else see anything else in here? If you look at the text analytically, Altar's relating it to their service of God. What is he saying? He's saying you have potential, you're here for a reason, and I want you to be able to actualize that, why you're here. And
he says to find tranquility.
Huh?
To find tranquility.
Yeah. And actualize your potential. And actualize your potential. And all the things that are the turmoil you feel inside, I want to help you find those tools to navigate that turmoil. And by the way, this is a disclaimer I said last time, and I realized I didn't say it this time. This course is not a substitute for studying Tanya completely in depth. This is just kind of like we said, a drone's eye view or aerial view of it. It kind of gives an overall structure. Studying it could take years, but we're going to do the best we can with at least the practical takeaway tools. Okay, look at page 4. Gail, do you want to jump in and read the question for discussion?
The whole thing?
No, yeah, the question for discussion. Go ahead.
Okay. Think of an area in which you are skilled, whether sports, music, a hobby, or a professional skill. How did you gain that skill? Keep going.
No, go ahead. Explain.
Okay.
How did you gain that skill? You're a teacher, right, Gail?
And yes. How did I gain practice?
Practice. Anything else?
Teaching, classes, professional development, instinct.
So part of it's you're born. I always say teachers are not you have a heart and soul of a teacher. Like you can go to all the schooling in the world and you still don't belong in a classroom sometimes. But to refine the skills and to get better at it, you need continuing education, right?
Right.
Doctors need CMEs, lawyers need CLEs, right? You need to continue learning and growing and turning to those who could give us guidance, tips, and tools, right? I taught this Friday night. We had, it was Shabbat together. It was a Shabbat where we were really focusing on inclusion and mental health at Chabad. And it was just to really open the dialogue. And it was a beautiful Shabbat. We had a large group from Stony Brook, 25 students from Stony Brook came and joined us. And I gave a workshop about gratitude and Moda'ani and the neuroscience and psychology of it. And it was fascinating, except this time I had a professor who does research at the university on neuroscience and psychology. And I told her this is the first time I'm presenting this class. I've taught this class to people in the military, to teenagers, to Chabad women who've been saying Moda'ani all their lives, the range, to women in prison, the range. And I've never taught it in front of someone who this is their research. So I told her, I said, give me feedback, good, bad, or other. And she actually added something very interesting because this is her field that she's so immersed in. She's doing research, she's leading graduate level, students in this area. Because of that, she was able to give me such concrete, practical advice. She actually told me about a study that they recently did about the power of gratitude in students. The power of gratitude, literally, they did case studies of different groups taking the same tests and the same courses, and not even the same courses, sorry, taking tests, and literally those who focused on gratitude and were able to articulate beforehand did better than those who didn't. So it was really cool to teach it in front of someone who was actually could be my mentor in this area, right? So the Alter Rebbe basically is our mentor for this area. And that's what we're going to be able to learn. And so when we're studying Tanya, really we're getting that mentorship or that coaching, that life coaching through it, which is tremendous opportunity. And we'll see some of the amazing takeaways. And you'll see actually over the next few weeks how each class kind of builds on the next. It's like first gather the ingredients, then we're going to do this with it, and then we're going to do this with it, and then we're going to troubleshoot in case we have that problem. And it builds on each other, so this way you kind of walk away with a practical toolbox. So let's look at learning exercise 1. Anyone? Gail, could you read it for us, just if you don't mind? Thank you.
All of us regularly make resolutions, whether they are New Year resolutions, birthday resolutions, or just plain, it's time to take charge of my life resolutions. Excuse me. We decide what we would like to be in a certain way, and we need to change our behavior to achieve the goal. Yet often, a few days or a few months or a few years later, we found that we have not followed through. For the purpose of this exercise, think of one failed resolution that you have made, write it down. Now think about why you did not follow through in that resolution, write it down. What is it that you really want, to follow through in that resolution or to abandon the resolution? Which you is the real you?
This question is brilliant, right? Who's the real me? The mother that says, I'm never going to lose my cool and yell again? Like is that the real me? Or the one that was like, I made that resolution last week and I'm making it all over again. And interestingly enough, I'm teaching this course in prison. I teach in the federal prison. And we're up to this part just 2 weeks ago. And it was so interesting to hear women who are going through this very deep level rehabilitation. And they're imprisoned. I mean, you can't get more of a, like, you have nothing to do but refine yourself mode of existence. And when I asked them this question, it was very different than asking this question to students. So the question is, who's the real us? Anyone want to jump in? Leora? You ever made a resolution? I make them all the time.
Yeah, I make resolutions all the time that I didn't keep. And so now what I'm doing is I looked at what it was that I didn't do, and I refined it. So I started slower. I started smaller. Like, for instance, I wanted to say my morning blessings in Hebrew. Well, I just have to get to saying the morning blessings regularly and what my daughter did was help me just say the blessing part in Hebrew. So I do what I can in Hebrew and I say the blessing in Hebrew and I do that. And then slowly I add reading the Hebrew because it's very slow and, until I really get slow. It's time consuming, yeah. So
your system, your solution is breaking it down into small bite-sized pieces so you can do it. And I actually think it's amazing that you're revisiting those resolutions. But which one's the real you? The one who can't keep the resolution or the one who, which one do you think is the real you?
I would hope the one that can keep resolutions. I want that to be the real me, You
want that to be the real me.
I'm making the effort to refine things along the way. And, we all make resolutions. I'm going to lose weight this year or but it's all about how we present our resolution. We have to present it more in bite-sized pieces. I'm going to not eat healthier, but I'm going to cut this out. So just cut out one thing. It's like baby steps. So I'm not going to drink soda anymore. I'm not going to eat this or, and it's all about baby steps.
So you're saying the one who makes the resolutions, the real you? I'm putting you on the spot, sorry.
I don't know. I guess it's all the real me. I mean, I'm making the resolutions and I changed my way of making the resolutions to stating them in small bite-sized pieces so I can accomplish my goal. Awesome. So I'm succeeding rather than failing, because who likes to make resolutions and fail? And
I do them all the time.
Well, I have those also, but I'm trying, it's
you know how many times I decided I'm going to drink a certain amount of water and I drink, that's right. One resolution. There are many. I always laugh, the gym's always until mid-February, they're very full. Then bit by bit, everything's gone, But so we're gonna explore who the real us is, each one of us can think of our own resolutions we've tried to make and tried to keep and how that plays out realistically. And we don't have to have confession. A student came over to Rabbi today. He's like, Rabbi, can I confess something to you? He's like, wait, where's that box? Where's the cardboard box? And the other student, he's like, wrong religion, sweetie. Do you need help with something? So the student's like, no, Rabbi, I have to confess something to you. Rabbi's like, this is not about what's going on? Anyway, the student really just wanted a little more guidance. And Jesse's like, this is wrong. Like, I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to hear you out. Happy to discuss this with you. The confessions are not our thing, you know? So we don't have to put everything on the table, but rest assured, I think we can each think of one or two that we've made and it's been challenging to keep. The question is, why is it so challenging to keep? And that's something that, sorry, if things popping from my screen and I just don't want them to, there you go. Which one's the real us? And so the Alter Rebbe is going to actually explain why sometimes it's so difficult for us to be the real us. It's so difficult for us to actually follow through on things that we want to do, right? If I decide I'm cutting out all sugar, I would actually never make that decision because I like chocolate. I'm okay with liking dark chocolate, right? But if I decide like I'm going to cut out, you know, if I make something that's so unrealistic, you know, then I'm quite, okay, I understand that that's not me. But we can all understand why. So Alter Rebbe is going to explain why. Let's say there's a character trait that we're working on. Or let's say we know we have a bad habit. Or let's say we know we have something that, like, you know, you're debate with your spouse, or you have an issue that pops up and you know you're going to react a certain way and you could already preempt it, you already know, and you already don't want to, and sometimes we fall into the trap and we end up not being our best self. So let's look at text 2 on page 5. Anyone?
I can read it, maybe.
Go for it. Thank you.
Starting with every Jew.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Every Jew, irrespective of his or her spiritual standing, possesses two souls, as it is written. And neshamot I have made.
That's where it's located in Isaiah. It's okay.
I have made. These are two souls. One originates in non-holiness, and this is the soul that is clothed in the blood of a human being to give life to the body. As it is written, for the soul of the flesh is in the blood. From this soul stems all of the evil, as well as the naturally good traits. For this soul of non-holiness is derived from a neutral level of non-holiness, which also contains good.
Okay. So the Alter Rebbe is saying, you know why you're struggling? Because you have two souls. You have actually two forces within you. One, which is the first one, and we'll talk about why it's the first one in a second. The first one that you have is about is selfish. And that's why it's actually referred to as the animal soul, because an animal is not like, well, if I eat this much dog food, should I save some for the dog near me? I feel bad. He looks hungrier than I am. He needs to gain more weight. The animal, the dog, sees the dog bowl and eats. Is the animal bad? No, the animal's doing what it needs to do. It's surviving. It's instinctive. It's selfish. It's not a bad thing. It's the way it is. So actually, the animal soul, which we actually are gifted with first, comes into our body first, is actually, from it comes evil, because arrogance or ego or self, a lot of our less finer character traits are all about me. If I get angry, it's because someone angered me. If I get impatient, it's because someone's bothering me. It's all about me, my self-preservation. And it's all about things that I feel like it's all about me. I'm the center of it. Okay? Selfishness. Now, here's where the Alter Rebbe is actually hinting to the idea that it comes from a neutral level of non-holiness. Okay? Which means that there's potential to elevate it. Okay? So we'll talk about what does that mean. So the animal soul is about me, selfish. And then Alter Rebbe is going to introduce a second soul, the godly soul. And the godly soul is all selfless, not about me. Truly about other. Now we split here sometimes when we try to figure out, is it about me or is it about others? So in my Sinai scholars class, I challenged the students and I said, okay, who here volunteers? And a student said, me. And I said, what do you volunteer to do? She says, I go to the puppy shelter. I said, really, why do you do that? She said, because I love puppies and I like to help. And I said, okay, why the puppy shelter? She says, because poor things, they're puppies, they're abandoned, they need help, they need to be cuddled, they need to be held, and I love puppies. And I said, is that selfish or selfless? And she's like, obviously selfless. Like I spend hours, I drive, like gas, time, money, I could be studying. she didn't understand. And finally, after we broke it down in conversation, I love puppies. I feel good when I leave. I like volunteering. It feels good. It nurtures me. There was a level of self in there. Now, was it a good thing to do? Absolutely. Should she do that instead of going to a party and being involved in a keg stand? Yes. I would encourage such behavior. As a matter of fact, as I said, I may have said this, I'm not sure. In the past course, I had once a very good friend. She could have been my mother. Her daughter's older than me. And we were friends in New Jersey, and she had lupus and diabetes. She wasn't well. And her solution to whenever she wasn't well was jewelry shopping and diamonds. And she loved diamonds. And so the jewelry store, they loved her. They rolled out the red carpet. She'd go straight from the hospital to the jewelry place. I mean, out went the chairs. They knew her favorite drink. The only problem is it was destroying her marriage. And why was it destroying her marriage? Because her husband was like, right? And she calls me once. So she's sitting with a therapist, and she calls me. She says, you know, my therapist, my no good therapist, I'm never going back there again. My therapist told me I need a volunteer. And I was like, I agree with your therapist. She's like, yeah, my therapist said I shouldn't come back into her office till I find a volunteer position. I was like, well, I agree with your therapist. She started screaming me. What? I mean, I was a pisher. I was 25 years old. I don't even know what gave me the chutzpah to say it. She said, I agree. I said to her, I agree. She started yelling at me, I'm sick. I have this condition. I have that condition. What do you say? And I said, I agree. And she hung up the phone. I didn't hear from her for a week, for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. 3 weeks later, she calls me, and I right away from her voice, I hear like a different energy, a different vibe. I hear something, right? And I say, hey, how are you? How's everything going? How are you feeling? Oh, thank God. Yeah, I have a treatment scheduled for next week and a surgery scheduled for next month, but she sounds okay. And I say to her, like, okay, like, you know, what's going on? She says, oh, I forgot to tell you, I have this great new position. I go once a week. I started last week. I'm going once a week. I'm going tomorrow. I'm going to the library, and I'm volunteering reading to children who are struggling with their literacy and helping them with reading. And it was amazing to me, this like notion that the Alter Rebbe teaches us that there's a part of us, when we do good, we feel good. Like when we do the right thing, it feels good. And so there's a level of us that there may be, yes, of course we should do good, right? The altruism, wonderful, but there's still a part of us, there's that ego involved where we like the way it feels to be a good person. Right? By the way, we should raise our kids to feel that way too, to identify within themselves. How does it feel to do good? Right? Does it nurture you and elevate you and uplift you? And then we can train them to feel when you're not being your best self, how that feels. Right? So the animal soul that we are actually born with a full animal soul. Godly soul, and God's infinite humor, and we'll talk about it shortly, why, comes into our like within us, in our bodies, rests within us at 3 different stages: at birth, at a baby naming, and then finally settles in at bar or bat mitzvah. Why at bar or bat mitzvah? You look at someone and says, today I became a man. What actually happens? Like, what's the magic bullet? What happens at that moment? You look at this kid, squeaky voice, prepubescent, you're a man, you're not a man. You can barely clean your socks up off the floor, right? But there's actually a spiritual transformation that happens at bar or bat mitzvah. The animal soul, the godly soul, settles in full. And what it does is, as this child is now transitioning into adulthood, where they're going to be making a lot of choices, they are now reached the cognitive ability to make a choice. That's right. Anyone who knows anything about development, my background's education, I taught 18 months to 2.5 for 8 years. I taught first grade for 2 years. I actually love education. The classroom I loved it. And the toddler age, which everyone hated, was like, I loved it. They were so curious, and they were amazing. But I remember learning, when I was learning about child development, and I started with my own children, the parallel play, right? They're playing, but they're playing near each other. The other person doesn't exist. A baby comes into the world fully selfish. I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm cranky, I'm gonna cry. I need me taken care of. That's the animal soul saying, me, take care of me. It's not a mistake, it's on purpose. That's when the child needs those to be fed and to be held and to be nurtured and to be cuddled, because they're developing an identity, a sense of security, a sense of self. And then you watch that transition as they go from 18 months, where they can kind of once in a while acknowledge the other person. Maybe sometimes it's to bite them, to hit them. Sometimes it's to pull the truck away, but they can acknowledge. And then as they shift into 2 and 2.5, They can start to even feel a little compassion for the other child. They can start to see the other person's feelings. And I know, Susan, you know, you're a pediatrician, so I'm sure you've guided a lot of parents through these things to understand those the developmental spectrum. That sometimes when a parent expects a child to be giving at 18 months old, that's when we're actually training the child through positive reinforcement, through boundaries, through discipline, so that animal soul parallels the development. And as a child reaches 12 or 13, then they're at the cognitive age where they can start to really imagine and feel what someone else does. So the animal soul, I remember once when I learned this, I had a big issue with it. What do you mean? Why did God give us the animal soul first? So unfair. The animal soul gets a head start in life? Not cool. And I remember asking it to someone I was learning Tanya with, and they reframed it for me. And they reframed it to understand that the idea of those 12 years, let's say for a girl, bat mitzvah, that those years are the years where that animal soul needs more training, and so it's getting refined and trained. So when we teach a child, look, I remember the classroom, you just hit your friend, look at Sam's face. I see tears in Sam is crying. Sam is sad. We're actually training that animal soul to be like, no, you can't just pull the truck away from Sam. Sam is crying, Sam is sad. Feel for someone else. So the animal soul settles in first. It needs a little bit more training. And the godly soul comes in stages, and as we need it, it's almost like, you know, needing that late afternoon coffee now gives you fuel to keep going. So that at godly soul, the divine energy that comes within us, which we learn about in text 3, comes in at the right time when we need to start really making some tougher decisions in the teenage years. But hopefully by then, by 12 or 13, as parents, we've raised our children to have a little bit more of a moral compass, to refine some of their character traits, and know you can't have it just because you want to. And even though you just threw yourself all over the supermarket floor, we're not going to just give you what you want, right? We are basically getting that animal soul, and we're reining it in, and we're training it. And that doesn't mean the training ends at that 12 or 13, because as any mom who's had teenagers in this group knows, you're nodding. Gail, I saw a nod and an eye roll. So it's a good combination. The work is not done, right? No. It begins in a different level, right? On a different level.
Absolutely.
So us, you know, Dahlia, stuff to look forward to. Dahlia's oldest, she's 9, Dahlia? But she's not going on 30, so.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so let's read text 3. Anyone? Someone jump in and read text 3, please. Anyone?
But the second soul of the Jew is truly a part of God above, as it is written concerning Adam. And God breathed into his nostrils a soul of life. And as we say in the morning prayer, you breathed my soul into me. It is written in the Zohar, when one exhales, he exhales from deep within him. That is, he exhales from his innermost being, for it is of his innermost vitality that a person emits through exhaling with force.
Okay. Here now the Alter is introducing the godly soul. And he's saying, okay, you want to know why you're struggling? Because there's 2 different entities within you. The first comes the animal soul, like we talked about. The godly soul, actually, it's not that it comes from God, it's actually a part of Hashem itself. And the analogy that Alter Rebbe gives is that it's actually breathed into us. So I'm not a trained singer, but those who are, you don't want to hear me sing, but those who are will admit that you sing. I know my husband's a chazan, he sings from, can't see, but he sings from very deep within himself, from here, his core. Me, I'm singing from here, and that's why my voice is always hoarse. I don't use my voice correctly. That's okay, I'm not meant to be a chazan. I'm very comfortable with that. However, if I ask you to talk, I could talk now for an hour. I may get a little tired, my vocal cords may be a little strained, but I can talk for 2. Ask me to blow up balloons for an hour. What's gonna happen? I'm gonna pass out, right? I'm not gonna be able to do even you know, the kids come, can you blow up a balloon? Can you blow up another balloon? Can you blow up another balloon? At a certain point, you're like, I can't anymore. when you breathe from your core, a part of you, literally, your ear, your essence, is in that balloon. So when God infused the godly soul within man, it came from his essence. His essence means the godly soul is a chelek elokam mamash, literally a part of God himself, from the highest source of godliness, which we touched on, well, from the highest source of godliness and a deepest level of concealment, okay? And from God's innermost being. Now, again, like we said, it's introduced as the second soul because we are born, it settles in fully later. And it actually allows us to exercise true free will. And really, it brings into us that selfless spiritual component of life. So let's look. It's a very I think it's a simplistic exercise, honestly, but look at page 7. It says, anyone want to just guide us on learning exercise 2?
Well, you pick, I guess you pick which of those attributes belong to animal or godly soul.
Exactly. It's pretty simple. Okay.
Yep.
We obviously know the selfish one is the animal soul, the altruistic one, the godly soul.
Godly. Mhm.
Breathed into us.
Godly soul.
Yeah. Embodied in the blood.
Animal.
Okay. Seeks pleasure.
Animal.
Yeah. And now we can understand how it could be the root of evil, right? Because some people, in the name of seeking pleasure, seeking, selfishness, get in a lot of trouble. The primal soul.
Animal.
Yeah. The second soul, we said the godly one.
Godly, yeah.
Relates to the transcendent and relates to the natural. Interestingly enough, I had a professor once who was taking this course with me, and she really did not like that term animal soul. She thought it was such an insult to animals. She was so offended. She's like, why? I'm like, no. Finally, we actually switched. I'm like, don't call it an animal soul. Call it the natural soul. The one that's involved with myself. So it was interesting to see, like, the relates to the natural, to the physical, to the mundane, to the daily, to what I see is very much a part of the story. Now, interestingly enough, that this doctrine of two souls was really revolutionary. No one ever thought of it that way. And it was really a revolutionary way that Alter Rebbe actually introduces us to this mindset and this way of thinking. And so basically reframing it that it's not the battle with good and evil, right? Because we said the animal soul gets its life force from neutral levels of non-holiness. It comes from God himself as well, right? So this model of good and evil tension between the good devil, the good, or the evil devil, is not what the Alter Rebbe is saying here. The Alter Rebbe is saying the natural and the godly. So it's a little bit of a nuance and a different way to understand it. And we have, at times, we think of the soul either as abstract or amorphous, something that's, we can't touch it, we can't poke it, we can't prod it, we don't understand, we can't weigh it, right? We can't, etc. We can't understand how it works. However, this is going to give us a lens inward, and we're going to see as we build on this that the soul has actually a very profound, it's profoundly complex, and the anatomy of the soul is profoundly complex. Like, imagine, Susan, if someone comes to you and says, I have an issue. Yeah, I have this symptom. I have an issue with my body. Well, imagine someone comes and says, I have these symptoms. You're probably a better doctor than this, because if you were the type of doctor who said, oh, it has to do with something with your body. Great, lovely. That doesn't help, right? Now, hopefully as a good doctor, you'll be able to narrow down and isolate and ask the right questions and understand where's the source of the issue. So in order for us to understand where the source of our own issues, we got to understand the makeup of what the parts are what the ingredients are, it's in a sense. So moving on to text 4, because I would love to try to at least get to text 4 and 5 and then put a stop, because believe it or not, in 15 minutes, Chabad House is fully set up. We have a girls' succulents and smoothie. We're going to be making succulents and eating smoothies, and we're going to be talking about the significance of Tu B'Shvat, like why does the birthday of trees relevant to us. But soup is on the fire, and the Chabad House is all ready to go. So all I have to do is drive there. Text 4. Anyone?
I can read it.
Go ahead.
The soul consists of 10 faculties corresponding to the 10 supernal supriot from which they derive.
Okay. Okay. And read text 5 as well, so we'll tie it together.
So we have the cognitive, right?
Yeah.
Is that the right page? And emotive. So we have chachma, wisdom, das, knowledge, and understanding, bina. Kindness, chesed, severity, compassion, humility, endurance, bonding, and sovereignty.
Yeah.
Sovereignty.
Just read text 5 on page 10 for us, if you don't mind, and we'll kind of at least get it to a point where we could a stopping point.
In addition to the 10 faculties, every godly soul possesses 3 garments. They are thought, speech, and action, as they find expression in the 613 commandments of the Torah.
Okay. So here is where I would love to wrap up with. Basically, what the author is saying is, you know, this soul that I just told you have, it's actually made up of 10 elements, 10 energies. 3 are intellectual and 7 are emotive. The intellectual are ideas, and the emotive is what do I feel or do about it. I think we're going to stop here because I just realized this is going to take us into a whole separate chapter and a whole separate discussion. And next Sunday night, unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not sure which one it is, I will be celebrating with 4,500 Rebbetzins from around the world in New York. And I'm looking very, very forward at the Kinnos. And in the future, if anyone wants to ever join me, they are welcome to be my guests for this weekend. It's a really incredible, empowering weekend. Talk about training and refocusing on why we do what we do and how we do it and best practices. It's all of that. And so I actually leave on Tuesday. I have training days Wednesday, Thursday, and then on Sunday night next week, a large celebration. I'll actually share if you would like the link to watch it live. It will be streamed live, but it's really, really, like I always, when I'm in that room, I just feel like this energy of female empowerment, of like women that are so focused and driven on this idea of repair, like fixing the world or bringing goodness and kindness to every single area of the world, every corner of the world, and every demographic. So we will stop here. Any questions or thoughts or ideas? Anything so far? Okay, I hope I'm making it clear. I realize some of these are abstract concepts, but like I said, you got to hang tight because at the end of lesson 1, it's more like lesson 1 covers like 1 through 8, but at the end, by lesson 2 and 3, like as we go section 2 and 3, we'll have more practical takeaways that we will be able to start developing a toolbox. Now we're just knowing that where the lay of the land is. Any questions? Any thoughts? No? Okay. Ladies, it's been amazing. It's been grand. Looking forward to continue setting together, and I will send out the recording when it is finished. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.